Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, my fellow Rezolvians. In today's episode, we're going to discuss Rezolve today, okay? The stock is down 0.5%. This is a outperformance kind of a day. This is a day where you're like, okay, good job, Rezolve. You know, you're only down 0.5%. Now, who knows? Things could change a little bit, but it is an outperformance day for Rezolve. Now, I was cautiously optimistic that we would get new ARR targets today, because after all, there was an investor conference with the Maxim Group with Dan Wagner and the Chief Revenue Officer, but we did not get that. Okay, so what's happening? Why is Rezolve outperforming? A little bit, you know, we'll discuss what's happening in the markets today and on all of that as well. And I'll give you my thoughts and expectations for Rezolve going ahead. Before we get into any of this information, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already, and check that link out down below in the description of today's episode. If you guys want to come join the trading community, come get involved with us over there. So the first thing I'll point to is, Rezolve is outperforming today. Look at BBAI down 3%. Other AI stocks are down more than that. Even, Datavault, DVLT, another one that I really like, down 4% today, right? SoundHound down about 1%, about the same as Rezolve. So it is a general outperformance today by Rezolve versus other AI stocks that you would call like Rezolve peers, okay? I think people are gearing up for the ARR update for 2025. We've talked about this extensively on the channel, but if you are just now joining us, here's kind of the rundown or the evolution of Rezolve. Rezolve was a pre-revenue company. They did not have any revenue coming into 2025. Rezolve set an ARR target of 70 million by the end of the year. That means that Rezolve said at the start of 2025, they were going to exit this year at 70 million in ARR. Okay, so if they stopped selling products in 2026, they would have generated 70 million. Well, fast forward to September, they said, hey, we've already hit 90 million in ARR, on track to hit, well, in September, they said 90 million, okay? October 1st, they said, look, okay, we've hit 110 million in ARR. We're on track to hit 150 million by the end of this year. Okay, great. Well, they included acquisitions in that ARR target. That's what the Maxim Group and Tom Force said, which, by the way, the Maxim Group has the highest price target on Rezolve of $15 per share. Yeah, like 600% upside from here. Okay, great. Well, they've done 3 acquisitions since earnings: SmartPay, SubSquid, and the biggest one was Crown Peak. That was the most recent one. That alone adds 70 million in ARR. So if we circle back to the 90 million in ARR before October earnings and add 70 million to that, that's 160 million in ARR, assuming there was 0 organic growth in Rezolve's business itself. Okay, so 160 million is kind of the addable number right now. Well, Dan Wagner said about 3 weeks ago now that Rezolve would provide an update for 2025 ARR in December. Well, logically speaking, we had this investor event today, December 8th, with Dan Wagner and newly appointed Chief Revenue Officer Crispin Lowry, formerly with Microsoft. Okay, and this was a virtual fireside chat moderated by the Maxim Group. So logically, it seemed like we would get the 2025 ARR update today. That did not happen. Okay, which is interesting. I wasn't able to actually listen to the fireside chat, but I'm sure it'll come out here in the coming hours. Honestly, like, this was an investor event. So I'm a little disappointed they didn't, from what we can tell, share ARR numbers. It would seem like the appropriate avenue to do so, to share it in this chat and then put out a press release maybe at the same time, right? We'll see exactly what was said in the coming hours, but it does not look like we got an ARR update. Okay, but I still think people are looking ahead to that because Rezolve's going to beat the numbers, in my opinion, like a 99% chance of that. And I've explained this before. Rezolve doesn't like legally have to update investors until March. If they're going to share a new ARR target for 2025 or maybe for 2026 as well, the target now is 500 million in ARR by the end of 2026. They're probably going to revise that higher as well. But they don't have to share anything in December legally until March. The fact that Dan Wagner said there will be a flash report with updated ARR, in my opinion, signifies that they're going to beat and they're going to raise guidance. And I think people are still looking ahead to that. Now, if we look on StockTwits, the sentiment today in Rezolve is extremely bullish at 76. On Friday, it was extremely bullish at 81. So there are a lot of bulls in the stock today. The message volume is pretty much unchanged from Friday. It's coming in high at 62. And participation ratio is high at 74. So there is actually quite a bit of activity with Rezolve today, bullish activity, despite it being such a weak day for AI stocks and for the broader markets, which is definitely worth taking note of. What's also worth taking note of, we don't have any interesting or unusual option activity, but the short interest has recently went up quite a bit from prior estimates of about 8% to 10.5%. So more shorting activity taking place. It looks like today about 1.6 million shares are being sold short in Rezolve. Okay. I'm not super shocked with this, considering one, the volatility in Bitcoin has been incredible. I mean, this thing is whipsawing back and forth. $90,000 really seems to be like a battleground for Bitcoin right now. But beyond that, we have the Fed this week. Now, what happened to the markets today was really, there wasn't a lot of like news. Okay. You did get this risk off kind of selling or risk on selling because of the Fed coming out this week, the anticipation of this, okay, which is normal. That's what you would expect to see before the Fed is some people, you know, hedging and placing their bets and whatnot. But as I've talked about in prior videos, like the Fed doesn't have enough data to go off of to accurately project out over the next 2 years and give you any kind of reasonable estimate for what they're going to do with their policy. Okay. So December 10th, this week, this Wednesday, is a massive catalyst. Now, December 16th, we get a bunch of economic data that would sway the Fed's decisions to cut rates or whatnot. Goldman Sachs said today that the Fed is not going to box themselves into one particular path this week. They're gonna leave it open for potentially even a January cut if the data were to come in weak later this month. That's fascinating because the markets are not pricing in a cut in January. They're actually not pricing in a cut in January, March, or April. They're pricing in a cut, the first cut in 2026 in June. So I think from that perspective, we might be positive, see a positive surprise from the Fed, where the Fed maybe is not as hawkish as feared. Okay, we're only pricing in about 2 cuts next year. The upside is, there's a lot of uncertainty in what the economic data looks like, but you're not heading into this Fed meeting with high hopes of Fed cuts next year, right? That is not the main thing that is fueling markets. Now, if the Fed does indicate they would be willing to cut in January or cut, 1 or 2 times next year, that could definitely help out the risk on trade in this market, which would be like a Rezolve, right? So I think after the Fed on Wednesday is when things really could get exciting for Rezolve. Now, obviously, we want that 2025 ARR update. And again, Dan Wagner said it was going to come out sometime in December. Could be December 31st. It could be tomorrow. It could be tonight. It could be next week or the week after. But some point in December, we are going to get that. And that's when things are likely to get explosive for the stock. That's my opinion, right? I think the technicals look pretty good as well. We've started to stabilize here at some of the lower levels. It also looks like we have a little bit of an inverse head and shoulders pattern. If you take here the shoulder, head, and maybe another shoulder here, could be gearing up for a move higher. The MACD line is also above the blue signal line, which is really good from a technical perspective as well. It shows a little bit of that reversal and a future potential move to the upside. And generally, the outperformance today of Rezolve is also very notable. Now, tomorrow we do have some economic data. Tomorrow we get the ADP employment change weekly. Last week was negative 13.5 thousand jobs. Again, this is going to have implications for future Fed meetings, not this week. Okay, this week you're going to get a Fed cut. There's almost an 86% chance of that. There's not much that's going to derail that. Like, you would have to get like a Fed official coming out just out of nowhere, like saying some wild crap to change the odds. Like, it's not going to happen. You're in the Fed's blackout period. The data will move the expectations for January, for March, April, June. For January 26th, you're pricing in a 66.2% chance of a pause, only a 23.4% chance of a cut. So big whoop. You're already well into pricing in a pause in January. Okay, so there's not gonna be a big shock there if the Fed is not super willing to cut rates in the immediate term or doesn't confirm a rate cut at the next meeting, right? That's really not the risk here. Now, tomorrow we also get JOLTS job openings for September and October. The important number is October. 7 million is the number that's expected. Anything higher than that signifies a better than expected job market. Anything lower than that signifies a weaker than expected job market. It wouldn't surprise me if this number comes in 6.5 million, 6.3 million, something like that. That would not shock me at all, and that would fuel some of the bets for a January cut. Now, depending on how this data comes out right ahead of the Fed meeting, like, imagine it like this. If we came in at like 5.5 million job openings, people are like, oh my gosh, this means the Fed's gonna cut rates, and the probabilities for a January cut skyrocket, and then the Fed comes out and says, yeah, we don't know if we're going to cut rates in January. That could be a negative surprise, right? But assuming we come in pretty close to expectations on this data, you're not going to get a huge shock from the Fed. I'm not expecting the markets are going to take the Fed negatively at all. Now, tomorrow, you also have Ollie's and AutoZone earnings pre-market tomorrow. And after hours, you have GameStop, Cracker Barrel, Casey's, Braze, Dave & Buster's. But the big earnings this week is Oracle because of the whole bonds debacle within AI stocks, and really specifically Oracle in the last 2 months, that helped fuel some of the AI scare that you had alongside the government shutdown and other things that were happening. Oracle's bond market blowout was a real problem for investors, and Oracle's going to tell you things are fine with AI. Their business is doing great, okay? In my opinion. Could be wrong in that, but that's my opinion. And this could really help to refuel the AI trade, mix Oracle earnings with the Fed. And I think we're set up for a very strong end of the week for Rezolve. Now, do we get ARR guidance for 2025 from Rezolve's management this week? I don't know. I was expecting that today, so I'm a little shocked that did not happen. I can only imagine, like what else did they talk about? if they didn't talk about ARR or revenue or any of that. So we'll see when that comes out. But, the story is still the same for Rezolve. I was just really optimistic that we were going to get new ARR targets today. Seemed like that was kind of the setup. Even the move on Friday, the stock was up like 5% in after hours at one point. It seemed like people were getting ready for that ARR update. That just did not happen today. It did not come today. But still, it's December 8th. There's plenty of time in December to get that update. And I think we're set up for a move higher. In my personal opinion, again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a financial planner. We do, though, want to get above that 20-day moving average when the move does come at $2.98. You get above that, then you have a clearer shot to the low $4, where your 100-day and 50-day moving averages are pretty much converged on each other at about $4.18, $4.19 per share. If you get above that, that's when you're talking about a much larger potential breakout. But first, you need the ARR, you need the Fed to happen, you need Oracle earnings, and you need a break above the 20-day moving average. But I am still as confident as ever in Rezolve. So let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comment section. A little bit of a flash update for you guys. Check that link out down below in the description of today's episode if you guys want to come join the trading community as well. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.